Kim Georgeton has a 30-year career in business, transformation, digital infrastructure, and consulting. She is a battle-tested conservative Republican leader, experienced business executive, and strong advocate for Ohio families. She is ready to bring her operational expertise and grassroots energy to her campaign for lieutenant governor on the Push for Ohio ticket. Kim's political journey is driven by her strong commitment to constitutional freedoms and individual rights, including the unborn. She has emerged as a principal advocate for limited government, family values, and health freedom. Combining activism with executive expertise, she aims to cut government's waste, unlock economic potential, and protect all Ohioans' rights with determination, ensuring a future where families thrive and freedom prevails. Let's please welcome Kim Georgeton.
Thank you, Betty. I know Betty actually from the Northeast Republican Women's Club, which is a club I used to be the vice president of. And working at that club was kind of my refuge when we were going through the COVID experience, when we were fighting masks and vaccine mandates. So it's great to see you all here. And I have actually been at Empower You a couple of different times. I spoke with Dan back when critical race theory was happening, and we did a short piece on what was critical race theory and how it was impacting some of the, especially local private schools in the area. My daughter attended CHCA at the time, and they were actually doing some critical race theory there. So that was something that we covered on that call. And then I came back and actually ran for a race here in this district, actually District 28, for state rep against Chris Monzel in a primary. And that was an interesting experience. It was my first time getting involved in government. And what I faced during that time was a lot of resistance from the Republican Party. And so that is something that has been consistent kind of throughout. When you're fighting the establishment, you're kind of running into a lot of different scenarios where the actual Republican Party is not trying to solve the problems that are facing the Republican Party. They are at times contributing to those issues. So that is something that I have been fighting ever since I have been involved in this business, in this political business. As Betty said, I am from the area. I'm the youngest of 7. I grew up as Roman Catholic. I attended Old St. Mary's Latin Mass every Sunday, and so I can speak Latin a little bit, at least all of my prayers I can tell you all in Latin. And so that is a little bit of my background. I do feel my father was a World War II Marine vet, and that is where I get my fighting spirit from. So that is just a little bit about me. And I got involved in this race very recently. In fact, January 1st, I received a call from the Putsch campaign. And that is how you say it, Putsch, like put your money where your mouth is. And Casey had come out in middle of December deciding he was going to run because one of the things that happened in his neighborhood was a data center was coming into his neighborhood, and he did not agree with it. He actually, with a friend, got into a helicopter. They flew over the site and they took a look at it, and they started to understand what were some of the implications of these data centers. And it really ticked him off in a way that you will see his speech come out online. And he is a big believer in free speech and the First Amendment. He is a bold speaker. He is an unapologetic speaker. And he is someone who does not back down, especially from a challenge. When he's challenged, he doubles down and goes even harder. And when I learned that about him, I respected it because I thought to myself, gosh, we've had all of these problems with our Republican Party and the establishment. We kind of need somebody like that. He's like a Donald Trump when it comes to that. When you look at some of the things he says, you will see that there are some similarities with some of the disruptive conversations that he's having online. And one of the things that has actually been a benefit out of this is we have not been able to get a single bit of coverage from the news until recently, when all of a sudden they decided to smear him with some racist comments. And it's quite funny because I actually headed up the Hamilton County chapter of Moms for Liberty for some time. And I have been called a Nazi. And I have been called a racist. So, and I have been called, all the names in the book. And I have been stalked. People have come to my house, taken pictures in front of my house, all those sorts of things. So, that is what we're dealing with in this society. And I was thinking about it, when did it have to become crisscross applesauce and not let's sit Indian style? Like those sorts of things that eventually evaded into our language over time. Did we really did we initiate that ourselves, or was that something that we were just slowly brainwashed into saying that that wasn't nice to say? So that's just one example. There are so many examples like that that you can think about in terms of what used to be First Amendment free speech and now what is considered speech that will get you canceled. So I urge everyone, and I'm a big constitutionalist. I do not shy away from the Constitution. I think it's very important that we go back to those initial requirements of the Constitution. Our founding fathers, I think George Washington, like you said, would agree. We need to be able to have these hard conversations without pulling any punches. I think we're done being nice to each other at this point. And what we've seen the left do in terms of just destroying the right over and over again with their, harsh, aggressive behavior, I think it's time that we as Republicans stand up to them. Do not let them bully us anymore. I think it's time that we take this into our hands and we own who we are, what we stand for, and what the spirit of the American culture actually is. So I got this call from Casey's campaign on New Year's Day, like I said, at 8 p.m. And they said, Kim, we need somebody who is truly a person who stands up, somebody who's not afraid, somebody who's kind of been in battle with the establishment before, somebody who is not afraid to speak their mind. And they needed somebody who also ran a state race. So I had run in the congressional district as well in 2024. And, I said, okay. So I talked to my husband. One of my family members is over there. So I talked to my husband about it and I said, look, I wasn't going to run for anything this year. I was ready to, I had just actually reached out to the Abolish Property Tax Movement people. And I had emailed them and I said, I want to help you guys get signatures. Like, let me know how I can, sign up. And I had just kind of gone through back and forth with my regional director of that movement. And that was sometime in December. And I said to my husband, I said, oh gosh, I know I told you I wasn't going to run for anything this year, but I got this call from the Casey campaign. And, what do you think about this? So my husband likes to build remote controlled airplanes, and he's always tinkering with things with his hands and whatnot. And so when he found out Casey was a person who builds cars and builds airplanes, he sat there and went through every single YouTube video that he had made. And he's like, all right, well, I think you have to help him. And so that is how I got on the Casey campaign. Through that conversation, my husband was really behind it. And I said, okay, well, let's do this. So it's been, 45 days since January 1st or so, something like that. It's been a whirlwind. We are trying to, even just from getting the signatures on our petitions, we had every door slammed in our face at every single Republican Party meeting. We were told to stand outside, or in some cases, we were told you're not even invited to come to get signatures. So, those are some of the things that we have experienced through the campaign. And we do think that there has been some effort to suppress our speech because in certain areas, and I thank you for allowing me to be here tonight, because, in certain areas, the news is not covering Casey in the way that they're covering Vivek. So, for example, Fox News, we've reached out to them multiple times and they will not let him come on. So, this is a situation where I think Donald Trump was in the same situation where he could not get any coverage. So what did he have to do? He had to be completely disruptive to try to get everybody's attention. And that's where we are with our campaign. So you'll see some things online that are a little bit shocking. But again, it's free speech. And this is what we need to do in order to be known in this campaign. Unfortunately, that's where we are. So a little bit about Casey as well. He is an entrepreneur. He is actually he races cars kind of in his spare time. He started a car racing company. It was a small company. He built a car to destroy the leftist narrative about electric vehicles. He calls it the Omega car. It gets 0 to 100 faster than a Tesla, and it gets 100 miles per the gallon on diesel. And it has a smaller carbon footprint than any electric vehicle when you stack it up side by side. So he was very proud of this endeavor, and he tried to get some people to actually invest in his company to commercialize this product. And guess what? No one would, because guess what? There are no funds to do that. Just like we have funds here to use to come to this awesome location, there are no funds to actually help a legitimate manufacturing company start a business. So that was one of the barriers he ran into earlier on in his career. He also owns a watch company. He takes old Swiss watches, takes them apart, rebuilds them so that they are actually able to be used by astronauts going into outer space. They won't explode. So he's an engineer by design. He graduated from Ohio State University with a design engineering degree, as well as did his father and his grandfather graduated from Ohio State University. His grandfather was Air Force veteran. He is actually buried at Dayton National. So like he has a long history. And then even prior to that, his family goes back to the buglers, in the war here or early on for the revolution. So he's somebody that has a lot of pride in America and being American. And when he sees things that are globalizing Ohio's businesses, it makes him very mad, and he wants to do something to try to stop that. And I think all of us feel that way when we look about what's happening with America and the whole America First movement and the Ohio First movement. We want to look internally. We want to make sure we're taking care of Ohioans. And that is something that I think is missing, not only in Ohio, but across America. And he's standing up for that. So that's a little bit of his background, a little bit of his family. He is married. He has a little girl, and then another one on the way as well. So, and then he started a nonprofit organization called Genius Garage because when he graduated from Ohio State University, he found out that a lot of engineers graduate without ever having had to turn a screw and a screwdriver. So he felt like he needed to create an educational process for young students who are studying STEM to actually get some hands-on experience, which is why he started Genius Garage, completely nonprofit. All the students go there for free. And in order to fund that, he started his YouTube channel. His YouTube channel, again, he's a social media influencer. So he's a different type of person. He's not your average politician, and he's never going to pretend to be. But when he started his YouTube channel and he gained up to 350,000 followers, that is something he built day by day in order to fund his nonprofit Genius Garage for young students. So he's already doing workforce development for young students in Ohio. And he's very proud of that. He did also receive a Lifetime Achievement Award from both President Trump and President Biden. And he jokes that he's probably the only straight white male that has received an award from President Biden. So that is that. That's a little bit about his background. So as far as our campaign and our platform, I'm not sure how much time I have. I feel like I've been a little bit off the schedule, but our platform is really, and I would like to contrast three things with our platform. Really, number one is Ohio jobs are for Ohio workers. Okay. I have a personal story about this. I am in consulting, have been in consulting for many years. I have seen the shift, what has happened in terms of offshoring and outsourcing our IT and consulting jobs over the years. And in April of 2024, I was let go of my job. Our small American boutique consulting firm was bought by an Indian firm, big Indian firm, $1 billion Indian firm, 250,000 employees globally they have. They come in and they snap up these small American companies. And the purpose of them doing that is so that they can actually get the book of business that our company had. So they got the book of business, and then they start laying everybody off one by one. And that's what happened to me in April of 2024. So that's called an H-1B visa. So when you hear about H-1B visas and offshoring work, that is what people are talking about. And that is what we cannot have happening in Ohio because people are losing their jobs. And if they're not losing their jobs, their wages are going to be pressed down. So if you know anybody in IT whatsoever, they will validate this for you because they've seen it happen, all the offshoring and all of the H-1B visa workers. So just imagine an IT worker makes about $100,000 a year. They can hire an H-1B visa worker at $60K a year. So they're saving $40K, but they're not passing that savings back to Ohio. The companies are pocketing it, and we don't see a dime of it. Not to mention the H-1B workers typically, this is very well known, they often send money back to their family members from wherever they are. And in H-1B visa situation, 70% of them are from India. The other 30 are from China and Eastern Europe and Asia. So that's the situation with H-1B visas. It is a federal issue, but in the state of Ohio, we can incentivize companies to hire Ohio workers, and we can disincentivize companies when they don't. And that is policy that we will be putting in place to make sure we're protecting Ohio jobs for Ohio workers. Second standpoint is around making sure that Ohio's resources stay in Ohio. And this is really around this whole data center craze that's happening. So if you aren't familiar, and I know that Tom DeWeese was here last week talking about data centers, but there are over 70 conversations happening in little communities all over Ohio for these enormous data centers. And they can be between 6 and 8 football fields in length. And then if you imagine all these diesel generators lined up all the way down the football fields, spewing diesel into the air while they're getting their power up. And that also goes 24/7. That's just one aspect of these things. And we need to ask ourselves a question: what is the ultimate goal of the data center? We know that it is going to be ultimate 24/7 surveillance of you and me from every waking moment and every sleeping moment that we have. They'll finally be able to tell when you flip your light switch on at home, when you open your garage door and you leave your house. All of this is digital surveillance that will be enabled through having these data centers. And I have this consulting background in technology, so I understand clearly how all of these pieces map together. And so that is something that has really concerned me from day one, which is why I am so much on this bandwagon about ensuring that we get privacy protections from data centers. So I went to one of the meetings in Mount Orab and I had my constitution and I was like, are you going to promise me that you are not going to violate my Fourth Amendment? And they're like, so, I mean, you know, we have to put privacy protections in place for when these data centers do go live. In the meantime, we need a moratorium on data centers so that we can understand and be able to answer the questions that people have, like how much water is this really going to use? How much energy is this really going to use? What are the health impacts of the electromagnetic frequencies that are going to be emitted from these machines 24/7 a day? We don't know. Are they going to kill all the bees? Are they going to kill the squirrels? We have no idea. And guess what? The EPA will not answer this question. In fact, they are giving a free pass to these data centers to spew all of the water that they use back out into any local waterway. Okay, what happens to that water? It gets generated with a lot of forever chemicals in it. And we, the EPA, does not have the equipment to actually clean that out. So I can tell you for a fact, the Google facility up in New Albany that currently exists today, it uses 387,000 gallons of water per day. That's the size of a small town. So we believe that Ohio's resources should stay in Ohio. And we know that some of these data centers are actually, the money is going out of Ohio. One of the data centers is just a company in New York. So they're getting the revenue, we're not. And also these are tax abatements. There are so many things wrong with the data centers. I could go on, and you can follow my page and see some of the videos I've done about this to learn more. The third thing is, am I getting close on time?
Yeah, just leave a few minutes to take some questions.
Okay. The third thing that we really care about is that we want you to own your home and to actually own it, meaning that you don't have to rent back from the government to whatever amount they decide they want to charge you on property taxes for whatever whim that they're on at that time. That should never have existed the way that it has, and the way that it has, you know, seniors that are struggling to be able to stay in their homes and young people to be able to afford their homes. So we're very much on this bandwagon. Both Casey and I signed the abolish property tax movement before we even got into this race. So we had signed it as constituents and we're living it out as candidates. We have like a 15-page document draft at how we're going to replace those funds, because one thing that we need to make sure is that we don't harm police, fire, EMS, and all of that when the cutover is happening. So we have a lot of interesting ideas that our policy team has gotten together and worked on, and we plan to ensure that this transition happens seamlessly. We also know that the Supreme Court said in the 90s, we are not even supposed to be getting any money for schools out of property taxes. That has been illegal for 30, 40 years. So the fact that it has existed this long and our state legislature has not done anything about it is an absolute embarrassment. So those are really our three things. And in terms of contrasting them, I just want to let you know a few facts, and I want you to go online and check them for yourselves. As far as Ohio jobs are for Ohio workers, our opponent has used the H-1B visa program in his own companies. Okay, so you can fact check that. As far as making sure that Ohio resources stay in Ohio, our opponent is funded by a billionaire from Pennsylvania who gave him $20 million. That billionaire has technology companies that will see a nice return on his investment when he rolls out all these data centers. Guess what else that billionaire owns? A company that comes in and buys up distressed commercial and residential properties. So guess what? If you get kicked out of your house or you want to sell your house and you're losing your property value because you have a data center around you, this billionaire guy that's funding our opponent can come in and swoop up all of those homes and still make money on it. So no matter what, he is setting himself up for a win. And guess what? Ohio is set up to lose because who has to care about that investment? The guy that's the billionaire that gave our opponent $20 million. On the third thing, we know that our opponent has not committed to signing the property tax initiative. And we have, like I said, we totally support it. We also know that our opponent is trying to say they're cutting income taxes. Well, you can't cut property taxes and income taxes at the same time. Which one are you going to pick? And why haven't you signed the property tax abolishment? So those are three key areas that I wanted to make sure you left here tonight understanding the differences between our campaign and our opponent's campaign. And I really want you to know that you do not have to vote for our opponent. You can feel confident voting for us because we are going to take care of Ohio and all Ohioans. And that's our only objective.
Does anyone have a question for Kim?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make a point about the gun owners, the Ohio gun owners, and the fact that Vivek won't sign that, and that Butch did, absolutely. And then another thing about him being on Tucker Carlson, and I wish people would look that up and listen to that because it's quite good. It was before he started running, but he's got a lot of information there. And then also all your great reels that you have on both YouTube and Facebook.
Thank you.
Kim, could I ask you, who is the guy?
Yes. Casey Putsch.
No, the guy with the 20 million.
Jeff, yes.
Thank you.
He's in
Question
the-
right here.
yeah.
The city of Cincinnati, how do they get away with not curbing crime? And what can the governor do?
Ooh, that's a tough one. So the state of Ohio has home rule, and each county has their own capability to manage basically what they're doing in their county. So what the governor can do is work with the county representatives and the city representatives to put pressure on them, to influence them. But there's really not like a law or something that the governor can put in place immediately to come in and take care of it as much as we would like there to be. So it really has to be a game of like, let's work together and let's solve this.
Other questions for our guests? We have an online question right back here. Let me repeat that. What is your position on the prevailing wage issue?
Could you give me some more context on it? Prevailing wages. So this sounds like it might be related a little bit to H-1B visas. So with regard to wages, that is another aspect that we can control. In the state of Ohio is we can control wages. So we can say like, for example, on that IT job example I gave you of $100,000, we can require that job has to stay at $100,000, not be subbed out at $60,000. So those are kinds of some things that we can do to help with the wage pressure. I don't know if that helps to answer that question online. Yeah.
Well, Kim, thank you for coming in and making everybody aware that they do have another choice. We appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much.
Okay. We're really pleased to have as our next speaker, Chief Tim Holloway. He leads the Evendale Police Department, bringing over 35 years of experience in law enforcement. His extensive career includes patrol investigations, drug enforcement, and supervision. In addition to those duties, the chief has dedicated more than 20 years as a member of the Hamilton County Police Association SWAT team. And beyond those responsibilities, he is also first vice president of the Hamilton County Police Association and vice president of the Shield, Ohio. His commitment to professional development and public safety is further demonstrated by his service as past president of the Hamilton County Association of Chiefs of Police. And currently, Chief Holloway chairs the Committee on Criminal Justice and Public Safety for the Chiefs Association. Chief, take it away.
Thank you, Tom, and thanks for the invite, and for those of you here at Empower, Dan Reginald and I, we have some history together. His business, his frame business, originally started in Evendale, way back when I looked much younger, and I had almost as much hair as Dan. So what I want to talk a little bit about is improving public safety in Hamilton County, and I'll give you some quick background on this, and then sort of move through things. This all started from a Chief Association perspective last year when I was president of Chief Association after the basically after the large downtown brawl in downtown Cincinnati and some other incidents. We spoke over a weekend with Chief Fiji, and we called a special meeting of the Chief Association, largely at her request, because of frustrations we all had with the criminal justice system. And that led to a series of efforts. And I'm going to kind of update you on those efforts, but I'm also going to tell you why it's important to understand how the whole system works. It's a big, complicated system, and it requires everybody. So we'll walk through from an education standpoint. I'll kind of fill you in, and then I'll tell you specifically what we're trying to do. A little bit about me. My law enforcement career actually started in 1990 as a member of the United States Army Reserve. I was a military police officer. From there, in 1991, I became a deputy with the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department. I worked there for a year. Then in 1992, I got hired at Evendale, and I've been at Evendale ever since then. While I'm there, I was a member of the Drug Abuse Reduction Task Force. That's undercover drug work. We did local stuff. We did some task force work with U.S. Customs that kind of took us all over the place a little bit with that. I spent a little bit over 20 years on Hamilton County SWAT, and that started off as a joint tactical and negotiator position. I eventually transitioned over to negotiations, eventually was negotiations team leader, and then ended up as the SWAT administrator, which is like the police chief of the SWAT team for Hamilton County. I'll talk a little bit more about this at the end, but I'm vice president of the SHIELD, and I've been involved with the SHIELD since, I guess, 2010. The SHIELD is an organization that serves Southwest Ohio, Hamilton, Butler, Warren, and Claremont County, and we assist police agencies and families when police officers are killed or seriously injured in the line of duty. To put that in perspective, what that looks like, we are involved in every bit of the funeral planning. We'll go back to the last one, which was Larry Henderson from the sheriff's office. When a situation like this happens, within 24 hours, we're meeting with the family, and we are cutting them a check that is going to cover every bill that they have for the next 3 months. It's their mortgage payment, it's their insurance, it's their car payments, it's their kids' tuition, whatever they need for the next 3 months until they get time to sort things out. We will continue to help after that, but in the immediate moments after a tragedy, we want to be there to say, you don't have any financial concerns. Don't worry about, how you're going to figure this out. I'll talk a little bit at the end. And then currently the vice president of Hamilton County Police Association. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And the Hamilton County, former president of the Hamilton County Association of Chiefs of Police. If you can't tell, public service is important to me. It's been ingrained in me. It's been ingrained in my entire family. I will not go through every one of these photos, but these are all uncles, aunts, grandparents, first cousins, and nieces and nephews. I will only talk about one person in particular. That's the one in the big picture in the middle. That's my father. The first picture you see of him is as a Cincinnati police officer. The picture in the middle is him being inducted into the Ohio Military Hall of Fame. And the picture there on the right is him receiving the Distinguished Flying Cross when he was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. My family's history with military service goes all the way back to the Revolutionary War, and includes both sides on the Civil War. So I was raised in an environment from home to school to church where service was an expectation. It was an obligation. It's not something that you did in your free time. Your free time was already committed to service. That it was the way things were. I was cutting grass at the church and school's baseball fields by the time I was 12 years old. So it's very important to me. I'm a firm believer that all of us have skills, knowledge, talents, and abilities. That in addition to whatever we do with those professionally, we have an obligation to use all those same talents to serve the better community. So that's my overarching belief about this. That sort of drove what we did with the Chiefs Association and drives me today to do what I do. Tell you a little bit about law enforcement at Hamilton County. Hamilton County is unique. There are, and I go to training all over the country, all over the state, and there's very, very, very few places like Hamilton County. Hamilton County is unique. We have 42 or 44 municipalities in Hamilton County, counting all the townships, villages, cities, all that kind of stuff. There are 35 separate police departments, and that does not include University of Cincinnati, Xavier University, or Cincinnati State, but community police departments. There's 35 police departments in Hamilton County. The Hamilton County Association of Chiefs of Police is a professional organization. We meet once a month as just chiefs and senior leadership, and we talk about big picture things. We do some policy stuff together when we agree that there are certain policies that ought to be countywide, that it's smarter if everybody agrees to do things a certain way. No one's obligated to do it, but we find that if we get on the same page with certain topics, that everything functions a lot better. The next biggest component is the Hamilton County Police Association. So this is slightly different than the Chiefs Association. The Hamilton County Police Association is all the operational teams in Hamilton County. So I'll talk about SWAT since I was on SWAT. There are 2 SWAT teams in Hamilton County. There's a Hamilton County Police Association SWAT team, and then there's a City of Cincinnati SWAT team. So the City of Cincinnati SWAT team, they cover the Cincinnati boundaries. We cover everybody else in the county. So they serve like 300,000 residents. We serve 500,000 residents. We both stay pretty busy. They are a little bit busier with warrant service. But to put that in perspective, between Cincinnati and Hamilton County, 150 times this year, a group of police officers, anywhere from 10 to 18 officers at a time, are going to be up at 4 o'clock in the morning, briefing for a search warrant to go knock on someone's door at 6 o'clock in the morning and arrest them for some dangerous, violent felony. The other operational teams are the dive team, and I will tell you, our dive team here in Hamilton County is absolutely fantastic. They are called upon not just locally here, but into other states because they are so talented and so well resourced. The other 2 entities that I have down at the bottom, they're a part of the Chiefs Association and the Hamilton County Police Association, but that's the City of Cincinnati Police Department and the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department. And even though they are part of those organizations, at the end of the day, they're the 2 biggest organizations. So they tend to be involved in every conversation just because of the sheer magnitude of their responsibilities. So that's what law enforcement looks like in Hamilton County on an everyday basis. And I will tell you, every single day, Evendale is backing up Sharonville, and Sharonville is backing up Evendale, and Springdale is backing up Sharonville. And this goes on, even though we're separate police departments. We all know each other. We work together. Our policies and procedures are 95% consistent with one another. So no matter what community you're from, no matter what police car you see drive by, if we're not all on the exact same sheet of music, we're all in the same band. And it's going to sound pretty good when we get together. The next part, and I have to be careful to be professional here when I talk about the court system. I can tell you this, that one of the things that we have learned with what we're doing from the Chiefs Association is that everything about the criminal justice system in Hamilton County, and especially the court system, is broken. If you go down to room A, down at the Justice Center, so every morning when you hear about bonds, people get arrested, they appear in front of a municipal court judge in room A, down at the Justice Center. Every single morning, 100 cases are going to go through there. And in that room, you have several different county departments. You have the prosecutor's office, you have the public defender's office. They represent the vast majority of the clients. You have the clerk of court's office that's in there. You have pretrial services that are in there. You have all these different employees, and I can't make this up. In the year 2026, they're all sitting at different desks with different stacks of paper in front of them, writing their own handwritten notes. Prosecutor has their own handwritten notes. The judge has his own handwritten notes. Defense attorney has their own handwritten notes. Clerk of courts has their own handwritten notes. And eventually someone puts some of those notes into a computer database, but they're all separate computer databases. This consultant from a private sector standpoint, would any board ever tolerate their CEO having 8 different computer databases? It doesn't work. And quite frankly, it's not much different than when I started in 1992. There's several reasons for that. One is expense, but that reason only goes so far, because the fact of the matter is, anytime you do a major technology upgrade, there's a huge initial expense, but then there's a cost savings after that, usually in reduced personnel and efficiency. The other thing is, well, that's the way we've always done it. It is always a good argument from any government employee. And then lastly, part of the problem you have is, in the same way in every county in the state of Ohio, you have an elected prosecutor, an elected clerk of court, an elected sheriff, elected judges who run their individual courts. So all of them are interested in advancing their own careers. They don't necessarily look at it from a system-wide issue. This is one of the things that we as a Chiefs Association recognize, that other than the sheriff, none of us are elected. I don't have to convince any voters of my wisdom. I have to answer to elected officials, but I don't have to sway voters. So from that standpoint, as we looked at this as a Chiefs Association, decided to go down this road, out of every part of the criminal justice system, we were the most politically independent. And if anybody could be counted on to just speak their mind about what's right and wrong and try and exact some leverage and influence, we were the best vehicle to do that, because we weren't beholden to a political party. And I will tell you, from a political standpoint, I don't care whether somebody is a Republican or a Democrat. I don't care. I don't care whether they have an R in front of their name or a D behind their name. From a criminal justice and public safety standpoint, I care about their policies, period, end of story. One of the issues that came up in a meeting with the judges, I was talking with Judge William Mallory, and he's the presiding judge in municipal court. And Judge Mallory's been around for a while. And good guy, another family that's completely dedicated their lives to public service. I have a lot of respect for him. But in one of our most recent meetings, I said, Judge, I said, here's part of the problem. I said, 25 years ago, if somebody came in with a serious felony, a felony of the first degree or felony of the second degree, you didn't have to write down a bunch of detailed information to get this person a high bond. Any single judge, whether they're a Democrat or Republican, would look at that and go, oh, you're charged with felonious assault? You shot somebody? All right, $250,000 bond. And everybody agreed that that was fair and reasonable. Well, that dynamic has changed because judicial philosophy has changed. There's still a lot of judges that will look at that and say, hey, you need a $250,000 bond. You're a bad guy. There's other judges, and I'm not going to name any judges by name. You can do your own research. There was a recent incident of a fight downtown on Fountain Square where they went to arrest a guy on some outstanding warrants. They get in a fight with him. At some point during this fight, he tries to disarm the Cincinnati police officer. He doesn't, but he grabbed the officer's gun, was trying to pull it out of the holster. He doesn't get it out, thank God. They get him handcuffed. They take him to jail. He gets charged he has the outstanding warrants. I think he gets charged with assault on a police officer, which is a felony. He gets charged with aggravated robbery for trying to steal the gun. And this judge, a relatively new judge, whose background is in being a defense attorney and being a public defender, he asked the defendant there in courtroom A, well, what can you afford? So what he ends up giving him is a $50,000 bond, but allows him to post at a 10%, which is $5,000. And all he has to do is go find a bail bondsman who will post it. So he'll just have to pay that bail bondsman $500. So it's at 10% of 10%. And he will walk free until his court date. And, several years ago, the voters here in Hamilton County, or not Hamilton County, the state of Ohio, approved a constitutional amendment that says that judges must consider public safety when issuing bonds. The problem is there's no mechanism to enforce that. That becomes a matter of discretion. All the judge has to say is, well, I did consider public safety, and this was my bond. And there's some recent legislation that will allow the Ohio Attorney General's office to challenge that. But again, Ohio's a home rule state. Generically, the courts give a lot of power and discretion to local municipalities to make the decisions that serve them best. There's some value to that, that you put the power for decisions as close to the people as possible. So it makes sense that the people here in Sharonville and the people over there in Springdale and the people up there in Westchester, it makes sense that those people should have the most influence over what happens in their community. But sometimes there are some decisions or some processes that become detrimental to other communities in the way people exercise discretion. So the Hamilton County court system is made up of 3 courts. There's a Hamilton County Juvenile Court. That kind of speaks for itself. Hamilton County Municipal Court, which is all misdemeanor charges. And there is the Hamilton County Common Pleas Court, which is all felony charges. All the cases prosecuted there are prosecuted by the Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office. And you see a small block up there for the Cincinnati Legal. The city of Cincinnati has its own prosecutors that prosecute just misdemeanors in the city of Cincinnati. So if you got arrested, you're leaving a Reds game and you're carrying a beer down the sidewalk, and Cincinnati police officer write you a citation for an open container alcohol, it's going to be a city of Cincinnati prosecutor prosecuting that on a misdemeanor charge. So, I'm going to talk some more about Hamilton County courts. Again, I'm going to skip juvenile. Juvenile is its own complicated mess. I mean, mess. It in my mind, the juvenile court is to the point that I'm not even sure why it exists, because I don't see it accomplishing much. I'm sure Judges Bloom and DeGraff and Reed would disagree with me, but I'd be willing to make that argument. So what happened when someone goes to court and they are found guilty? One of a couple things happen. One is they are sent to the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections. And so that's on felonies where you're going to go to jail for more than 6 months. And I know Judge Berkowitz has spoken to this group before, and I have a lot of respect for Judge Berkowitz. And he talked a lot about this in the media, but is a program called TCAP. And TCAP was passed by the legislature, and it was passed as a budgetary measure. But the idea was for nonviolent felons, if we're going to lock them up for 6 months or less, let's lock them up at the county level. Let's not send them to the state of Ohio, because, Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, it's very expensive to house inmates and that kind of stuff. So let's keep them housed at the county level. But in order to do this, the state will give money to the counties for housing their own prisoners, because under the Ohio Constitution, it's the job of the state to house prisoners on felonies. However, what they said was, this is very expensive for us. It's a little bit cheaper for you. Plus, you're at the local level. You know who needs to be in jail. You know what programs are going to work best for this person. So I'll tell you what, we're going to give you the discretion to take care of this, and we're going to pay you to do it. Last couple of years, that paying them to do it has been about $6 million each year to Hamilton County. Hamilton County receives more TCAP funds than any other county in the state. So if you are the presiding judge of common pleas court and you are meeting with the prosecutor and another elected official who is meeting with and you're meeting with the 3 county commissioners who are all elected officials, and you explain to them that as long as people don't get locked up, the county gets $6 million a year. So they've created this incentive that was intended as a state level budget saving measure, but they've created this incentive to put criminals out on the street. I couldn't make this up if I tried. If you sit down and look at TCAP from a logical standpoint, it literally makes no sense. And the same way, we recently had a meeting with a couple of state representatives, Representative Abrams and Representative Cecil Thomas, both former police officers, one Democrat, one Republican. And as we were sitting there in the room, we were all in agreement that TCAP has 6 million flaws. But they also both made it clear from both sides of the political aisle, there is no appetite whatsoever in the Ohio General Assembly to get rid of TCAP. So now it's a matter of trying to reform it. And one of the things that we would like to see, and we'll have a slide about some of our goals later, is transparency and accountability. So although they may not be able to restrict TCAP or completely do away with TCAP, let's start saying, hey, if you've been convicted of these crimes, you're never eligible for TCAP. Or if you've been convicted of so many crimes, no matter how minor your crime is, you're no longer eligible for TCAP. Oh, and one more thing, Hamilton County, if you want TCAP funds, here are your annual reporting requirements from your probation department. Tell us how many people you put on probation, how many people successfully completed probation, how many people did not successfully complete probation, and what did you do with those ones who didn't successfully complete probation? Because here's the interesting thing about all this. So now you have felonies 3, 4, and 5 that essentially by law that no one wants them to go to jail. They're nonviolent felonies, but these can be breaking into businesses. These can be stealing cars, and these could be people who have stolen 5 cars in the last 5 years. That the law says they really don't belong in prison. So we're looking at ways that we can set up these triggers that say, okay, that's it. This is your 5th felony of the 4th degree in the last 3 years. You are no longer eligible for TCAP. No matter what you do, you're going to jail. And so that's about accountability for the criminals, and requiring this reporting is also about accountability for the courts and the probation. If the only accountability is a budget, well, there is none, because you have this perverse incentive where your budget grows by not sending people to prison. And only a government program could come up with something like that. And then the other possibility is someone does get sent to prison in Ohio, the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections. And the good thing is there's been some movement on that. I know if you guys remember the Patrick Herringer homicide down over the Rhine, his widow has been very vocal. There was just legislation passed. It was the Patrick Herringer and Reagan Tokes Act. Reagan Tokes was a young lady from northeastern Ohio, I believe it was, who was also killed by a parolee. But this is to require some mandatory monitoring of any parolee who's on an ankle device. Because even though I could pull out my phone right now, get on my Verizon Family app, I can tell you right now where all my children are. One lives in Northern Kentucky, one lives down by UC, one lives in Chicago, one lives in Atlanta. I can tell you exactly where they are. 6 months ago, the Ohio Adult Parole Authority could not tell you at any given point in time where all their parolees with ankle bracelets were. Hamilton County Probation, when they put somebody on EMU, the electronic monitoring unit, Hamilton County Probation, whether it's part of their sentence or part of their bond, as a probation officer, I can't pull up my phone at 8 o'clock at night and see where all my probationers are. This is where the failure to invest in technology becomes critical. And we're gonna keep going with this. So the other part of the criminal justice system is at the state level. And there are two mechanisms at the state level, and that's the Ohio General Assembly and the Ohio Supreme Court. Obviously, Ohio Supreme Court, that's pretty self-explanatory on their interpretation of laws. But an important part of the Ohio Supreme Court, one of their primary functions is the, what do you call it? The Chief Justice, the Ohio Supreme Court, appoints the Ohio Sentencing Commission. Numerous case law from Ohio and throughout the country says that you have to treat similar criminals in a similar way. That makes sense. Two people that commit the same crime ought to roughly get the same punishment. So the Ohio Sentencing Commission issues guidelines to achieve that. And it basically says, hey, if you get people committing the same crimes, they should get the same punishment unless. And then they come down with a series of unless. And then you get into these individual factors that are unique to each crime that sort of aggravate the circumstances and say, no, okay, he's a little bit different than she is, so we're going to treat him a little bit different. And so the Ohio Sentencing Commission that has a lot of influence over how sentences are handed out. The Ohio General Assembly works regularly with the Ohio Sentencing Commission to try and craft legislation so that the legislation and the case law and the stuff from the Sentencing Commission doesn't end up in conflict, so we don't end up with a property tax and school levy issue happening in the criminal justice system where the Supreme Court says, no, you can't, and every court says, yeah, well, we don't care, we're going to do it anyway. So that's the other part of this. I want to make sure I'm counting from my slide. So there's the Ohio General Assembly and the Ohio Supreme Court. And then finally, and this is what we tried to do with our project, and we are still working on it. These are all the different parts of the criminal justice and public safety system in Hamilton County and the state of Ohio. All of these people have to be working towards a similar goal and be living within the same set of guardrails in order for it to function effectively. And as I explained, with a few little anecdotal stories, that is not the case. It just isn't. I go back to what I talked about with the bonds. One of the things we found out about in talking to the judges, it took us a while to get the judges to sit down with us. They got mad at us because we made some pretty public criticisms of them. Once they eventually sat down with us, now we've had a series of conversations, so it's been productive. A law, I'll take something simple like theft, and it says, theft basically says that you can't take the property of another. Well, when a charge is filed, the police officer fills out what's called a criminal complaint, which basically says that John Smith did not only exert control over the property belonging to Walmart, without the consent of the owner, to wit, and merchandise in the amount of $100. That's what a complaint will say. Well, cops are lazy. Cops are lazy when it comes to paperwork. I'm not going to lie. We admit it. Well, they were filling out the affidavit. The affidavit's supposed to be a set of facts that supports a complaint. Well, that affidavit would say, on April 16th, John Smith did not only steal $100 worth of merchandise from Walmart without their consent. Well, that doesn't tell the judge anything different. And then the other piece of paper they fill out is an arrest report. And there's a section on the arrest report that's a narrative. And it says, on April 16th, John Smith did not only steal $100 worth of merchandise from Walmart. So you have all three of these documents all saying the same thing. And the judges were looking at this and saying, this is a $100 theft for Walmart. Why do I care what the bond is? This isn't a dangerous criminal. Because us as police officers, we were not doing our job. There's a bond information sheet that was hardly ever getting filled out. And one of the reasons it was hardly ever getting filled out is because for so many years, there was this understood agreement that serious criminals got serious bonds. Minor criminals got minor bonds. The courts got away from that And we were slow on the uptake in recognizing that. So that we've redone some of this paperwork. Specifically, we've sat down with the judges and said, what information do you want to know to set higher bonds? Because if we are not giving them that information, then we're not going to blame them for their decisions. But if we are giving them the information that they want and they continue to give low bonds, then we feel quite comfortable criticizing them. We'll start off privately criticizing them, and that has happened. The police chiefs have picked up the phone and called judges and said, Judge, this is what happened today in your courtroom. This is why it upsets me. Can you give me an explanation? It's helping. It is not moving as quick as any of us on the law enforcement side would like. But this is one of those deals. When you consider all these parts, the criminal justice system and public safety is going to be more effective if we are working together. Even when we perhaps disagree on the direction to go, we will as a system be more effective if everybody's working together. Now, your motto here, educate, enjoy, and engage. So the engage part, and this is where it becomes important for you. You have influence over these decisions too. Like I said, police chiefs, we're apolitical. We make all kinds of arguments about what we think would be best. But at the end of the day, it's an elected judge who gets to decide what's best. Those judges are elected by everybody in this room. And if judges keep getting elected, if prosecutors keep getting elected that have a greater concern for the well-being of criminals than they do for the public safety of society, and greater empathy for the root causes of crime than they do for the victim of that crime, we end up with a system that is not effective at keeping the public safe and protecting victims. And this is a pendulum that constantly swings back and forth throughout time. And we have gotten to the point where we as law enforcement, I can tell you this, we feel like the pendulum has swung as far the wrong direction as it can. We don't think it's going to get any worse. But it hasn't started to swing back the right direction. And I can promise you at some point in time, it will swing back. I just don't know exactly when that is and at what cost that will come. The Chiefs Association did an event. It was a large event, but it was a private event with the Greater Cincinnati Regional Chamber downtown at their offices. And pretty much everybody in attendance of that were downtown business people in the city of Cincinnati. And I had a conversation with one of them, and this guy, his company develops apartments. So I don't know how often you get down to downtown Cincinnati, but you have all these old office buildings that aren't filled up with offices anymore. They're getting bought and they're getting turned into apartments. And if you run one of those businesses, your business model requires that it be a safe environment, because it costs tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to turn these buildings into apartments when they used to be offices, which means you have to charge a lot of rent to get your money back. And if it's dangerous around your building, you're not going to be able to charge a lot of rent. So they have a vested interest in Cincinnati being safer. And one of the guys called me afterwards, and he goes, how do we as business owners do this? And I said, you get with other business owners in your block, in your neighborhood, talk about what your concerns are, come together, write a note, write a letter, send it to every single member of council, send it to the mayor, send it to the city manager, and tell them these are your concerns. And, when can we sit down and talk about this? Because if you have to if you're a Cincinnati city council member or the Cincinnati city manager or the Cincinnati mayor, and you have to sit across the table from representatives from four companies who this year are going to spend $300 million renovating buildings in downtown Cincinnati, those are voices that are going to be listened to. And when gubernatorial candidates come out and talk back. Don't just listen to them. talk back to them when they're here, send them emails, comment on our social media pages, tell them what you expect. I don't remember the exact quote, but Thomas Jefferson pretty much summed it up when he said that all of us get the government we deserve. And right now in Hamilton County has a criminal justice and public safety system that it deserves. The people of Hamilton County have been unsuccessful in swaying the elected and appointed officials to choose a different course of action. And until they get motivation or get replaced, it will not change. They have a philosophy that they believe in, just as you have a philosophy that you believe in. And that's why, and us in law enforcement. So that's why we started this, because we felt like it was going in the wrong direction. And we realized that we had a role, and it wasn't fair to the citizens we serve to just sit back and cross our arms and go, man, this is screwed up. It's not fair. Anybody here live in Evendale? All right. If you lived in Evendale, would you be happy if you came into the police station to complain about your experience with the criminal justice system, and I just sat there and looked at you and go, yeah, it sucks, doesn't it? You wouldn't be very happy with me as your police chief. And rightly so. And being a police chief, it's a challenging environment. And especially the bigger cities you go to. I don't care whether it's Terry Theetge or Adam Henney. I know them both. I have respect for them both. But here's the deal. At the end of the day, just like me, they have elected officials that they answer to. The city manager can fire the Cincinnati police chief. The mayor of Evendale can fire me tomorrow. It's my job to deliver a police department that meets the expectations of the citizens of Evendale. It's their job to deliver a police department that meets the expectation of the residents and business owners of the city of Cincinnati. Now, how do you as a police chief navigate those waters when you honestly believe that you have developed good policies that are going to lead to safer communities, and that these policies are supported by a majority and sometimes a vast majority of your residents, but they're in conflict with the people who can hire and fire you? What do? Do you try and do this behind the scenes and exercise influence with the mayor and city manager? Do you get into a public tiff with them? Do you just nod your head and say yes sir, no sir? Or do you say, this is the best advice I have. If you want me to carry out a different philosophy and vision, then hire somebody else, because I'm not going to do something that I don't believe in. So these are the type of situations that police chiefs find themselves in, and there's not always a right answer. And it's the old question of which hill are you going to die on? Which fights are worth it? So it's challenging. So last year we did that call to action. We did a few different things. We hosted some town halls. There's one up there at a Baptist church in Roselawn. There's one over in Delhi Township. We did one with the Cincinnati Chamber. We sent out some press releases, and we've talked to a bunch of community groups, and we're here with you tonight. I'm doing my best to share information so you understand how the system works. It's a complicated system, and I want you to understand that fixing it isn't as simple as replacing a judge or replacing a sheriff or replacing a prosecutor. There's a lot of working parts. We are using whatever influence and leverage that we have with every one of these parts. We continue to have meetings. And the good thing about these meetings is it has developed relationships where behind closed doors, we can offer very harsh criticisms of one another. And that's good. If I want to criticize a judge, I came this close to pick up the phone and call a judge today, and I didn't. Because when you use the word reasonable, a decision that she made was on the very tolerable end of reasonable for me. But it wasn't a big enough one where I'm going to pick a fight over this issue. So our goal is to stay at the table with as many people as we can, as often as we can. We are going to keep chugging away at it. I think in the future, next year or two, we're probably going to push a lot for some legislative changes. Because here's the way I look at things. I'm a police officer. We enjoy a great deal of discretion. Judges enjoy a great deal of discretion. Prosecutors enjoy a great deal of discretion. And I think all these jobs are well served with discretion. However, when people begin to misuse their discretion in a way that they're no longer carrying out really the role of their office, then it's time to rein in some of that discretion. That's what we'll work with the General Assembly on. So that's what we've been doing. That's your criminal justice system. And if you don't live in Hamilton County, this description of how it all works is pretty much the same in every county. The one thing I had on there, and this is important, at the bottom of the big one, was the NGOs. This is mental health treatment, addiction services, this kind of stuff, social service agencies. Those are important. The last time the Chiefs Association did a huge project like this was a heroin task force, and that started back in 2015. Where almost 2 people a day were dying of opiate overdoses in Hamilton County. The numbers now are back to what they were in 2012, and you have these teams. They call them QRTs, quick response teams, that go out into communities and engage drug addicts and engage not really drug dealers, but families of drug addicts and other community organizations. These QRTs, they go out, and you have a police officer on this team. You have a social worker on this team. You have a mental health professional on this team. You have addiction professionals on this team, and they're going to find the addicts where they are. They also have people from homeless social services to try and get the people that are willing to go into a treatment, into a shelter, because not every person who commits a crime needs to go to jail. The whole goal when someone commits a crime, you arrest them, is to take whatever actions are necessary so that they don't do it again. And I will tell you, I bet you 40% of the cases in Hamilton County on any given day, a major underlying factor in the crime that was committed is the mental health of the person who committed the crime. There were nowhere near enough mental health resources, and our laws are not set up well for civil commitments to compel people to engage in mental health treatment when they need it. And this is why you end up with homeless camps that you see along the highway, where you have 40, 50, 60 people with their own little community down there, that every single person there needs mental health help. And they aren't getting it because there's no way to compel them to. And they're creating a danger to themselves and oftentimes a danger to others. So the social service aspect of this for mental health and addiction, it's a huge part of the criminal justice system too, from an ancillary standpoint. And we're engaged with them on an ongoing basis, but that's more on an individual case by case basis. But there need to be some changes with that at the state level too. So with all that, and like 10 minutes left, who's got some questions?
Who's got a question?
Here.
Right here.
Barb, does your association of police chiefs ever endorse judicial candidates?
No, we do not, and we never will. We have to work with every single judge. We have to work with every single prosecutor, every single sheriff. We are a completely nonpartisan organization.
Chief, I was glad to hear you talk about the property owners as they're converting these buildings. Real quickly, I have a young friend that is forced to work downtown on 4th Street. He was heading home. He parked in the garage under there, heading home about 4:30 on a work day, and he's not stuck in traffic, but he's on up. All of a sudden, he's behind other cars. All of a sudden, a gunfight breaks out between 2 teenagers firing each other across the street, across these cars. And this guy grew up in the Balkans during a war. And he said, I've got a really strong sense of self-preservation. And he said, I wanted that guy in front of me to get the heck. It was a red light. I don't care. Go through the red light, get me out of there. So I think the central business district is sort of the epicenter of a lot of this. A lot of these events seem to happen down there. Has there been any discussion with, there's a very powerful group, the Cincinnati Business Committee, the CEOs.
Mhm.
I mean, if the big property owners and the Cincinnati Business Committee gets together, I'm thinking they could persuade the party that has almost all the power to maybe do something here. I don't know. Are that they're
But
part of the?
let me answer that as honestly, but not as direct, as honestly and directly as I can, but not as honestly and directly as I want to. Greater Cincinnati Regional Chamber and the Cincinnati Business Committee share the exact same concerns you just talked about. And I have no doubt, much like I asked every one of you to exercise your leverage and influence where you can, I have no doubt that they are doing the same thing privately. So.
We have a question here.
Hi.
Sorry, I missed this, but I know you were not elected, but I was wondering who all selected you and who do you answer to?
So the way it works for me in Evendale, I was interviewed by the entire village council and the mayor. And then they met in executive session. Village council, looked at the candidates and said, we want Tim Holloway. Now it's up to the mayor to hire and fire. So the mayor makes a decision. Yes, we're going to go with Tim Holloway. Then they write an ordinance hiring me as a police chief. So on paper, the mayor can hire me and fire me without considering council. That has never happened. They have always gotten council input. So, and every department's different. Some places with a strong city manager form of government, the city manager does all the hiring and firing. Some have a strong mayor, but they also have a city manager where the mayor is doing it. Townships, sometimes it's all three township trustees. Sometimes it's a township administrator. So at every place is a little bit different. So,
Tim, if I could change the topic to I-275, it just seems like it's just become a racetrack. And I don't ever see any Hamilton County sheriff on 275, rarely at all. Is your sense the same, or am I just imagining it?
I will say this. 275, it's interesting. So, I mean, you start over to the west right there at Route 4. So between Route 4 and I-71, you have Springdale, you have Sharonville, you have Blue Ash that all have different jurisdiction through there. And Ohio State Patrol, they'll kind of work independently. As a general rule, the sheriff's department stays out of communities that are served by another. They can, but as a general rule, they stay out of communities that are served by another agency. And I will tell you this generically, and a lot of this is what we call, the chiefs refer to as COVID fatigue. You had this mentality of not engaging. There was less traffic out. You were trying to reduce the number of contacts. And when that stretches out over 2 years, that ends up in a cultural change where police officers are doing less proactive things. And then the other part of that is, it used to be a lot of cops will do traffic, not because they like write traffic tickets, because I hope to get into something else. I hope to find drugs, all that kind of stuff. Well, when you were doing that and nothing was happening to the people, then you had cops who are like, well, why am I wasting my time? And that's us from a cultural standpoint, law enforcement, to get back to smart, proactive police work. Because I can tell you this, writing tickets for the sake of writing tickets, a trained monkey can go do that. It's not complicated. But there's no, it's very, very, very rare that you're going to find a police chief that wants to see traffic enforcement because it generates a lot of money for the community. That mentality went away 10 or 15 years ago for the most part. It probably still happens occasionally. Generically in the profession, that's kind of gone away too. So,
Who else has a question right here?
Yeah, I might have been a little confused when you were talking about the TCPA. I said,
Yeah, TCAP. Yeah.
yeah, TK. I thought the way you explained it initially was that the state was paying the localities to incarcerate locally.
Does
It's more of a parole system that they're paying for or something. It's
It-
not monitored so well.
what they're doing is, I'll use let's use a felony of the fourth degree, breaking and entering. You break into a business at night, and state law said you can go to prison for up to a year for that crime. You can. The Ohio Sentencing Commission says if it's an unoccupied business, there is no threat of harm. The presumption should be for probation or local incarceration. And so when the local courts decide to keep the punishment local, the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections says, "Hey, thank you very much. Here's your money." So you see where there's little incentive. And then if you put those people on probation and they don't complete their probation, and the judge is looking there and they're thinking, I can't really send this guy to jail anyway. And they were supposed to do 5 things while they were on probation over a 12-month period of time. They only did 2 of them completely. One they kind of did. The other 2 they didn't do at all. And the judge is sitting there going, what am I going to do? Keep him on probation for another year? No, we're just going to terminate his probation. You're free to go. Don't come back here. That's where we're at, unfortunately.
We have a question here.
Hi. What support would you like from the governor's office that you're currently not getting?
Here's what I would say to that. I want to look at time real quick. I think the biggest issue that we face through all this, and going back to what Tom said about the juvenile crime or the young crime down there, we have culturally we have a crisis of accountability, but nationwide, statewide. And I want you to put this in perspective. If you are in a urban school district, because those are the lowest performing school districts in the state, you're in a city inside public schools, and by 3rd grade, you are not reading at the 3rd grade level. You're barely reading at the kindergarten level, but they go ahead and promote you to 4th grade. And then also at the end of 7th grade, you're reading at a 2nd grade level, but they still promote you to 8th grade. And so you face no accountability. And you're living in a home with a single parent, and that single parent has to work, and you sort of run free reign, and you face no accountability. Then you start to run into the juvenile justice system. And when you get there and they say, listen, Johnny or Susie, you can't do that anymore. I'm telling you, you can't do that anymore. And you've been to the juvenile justice system 5 times by the time you're 16 years old, and never in your life have you faced accountability. It's really hard to impose it on a 16, 17, 18-year-old who for 16 years of their life is programmed not to have accountability. So from a governor standpoint, it's limited what the government can do, what the governor can do. But chief executives at that level have an opportunity and responsibility to exercise some leadership on the issue of accountability. Yeah.
Michael, do we have any questions online? Let's thank Tim for coming in and talking to us tonight. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sam.